All right, guys, today what we're going to be doing is we are going to be talking about rates, okay? And the simple book definition of a rate is that a rate is just a ratio that compares two quantities measured in different units, okay? Another simple way, a really simple way of putting that is a rate can just be thought of as an action over a period of time, okay? So it's just an action occurring over a period of time. So what we have is an example of what a rate would be like. Johnny eats 5 cookies per minute. Okay, so again, when I say action over a period of time, here's my action, is Johnny eating 5 cookies, and here's my period of time, per minute. Okay, what I can do though is I write every rate as a fraction. Okay, so this is really 5 cookies, my action's going to be my numerator, and my period of time per 1 minute. My period of time is my denominator. So this was what my rate would look like. Johnny eats 5 cookies per minute is 5 cookies over 1 minute. Okay. If you guys think of other things that we can use rates for, such as miles per hour, that's how fast. That's when you're driving a car. You measure the speed in miles per hour. That's a rate. That's also written as however many miles you're going per hour. So that's how it would look like as a rate and as a ratio. Okay, so what I want to do now is we're going to use rates, and we're going to complete a table by using rates to answer certain questions. So if I look at this right here, I'm given a table, and I'm told that Jim enters marathons. He runs 4 miles every 1/2 hour. How far did he run in 3 hours? Okay, so I'm going to use the rate of 4 miles per every half hour to figure out how far he runs in 3 hours. So here's what I have. I set up a table. I have my distance in the top part of my table because I have the action in the top part, kind of like the action being in the numerator. And then I have my period of time, which is time in hours, in my denominator, okay, or in the bottom part of my table. Okay, so if he's running 4 miles every half hour, what I'm going to do in the bottom part of my table is I'm just going to count by half hours. Okay, because if I count by half hours in the bottom part, then I can just count by 4 in my top part of my table as well. Okay, so after 1 hour, Jim actually runs 8 miles. Because I'm counting by 4. Because if I count by halves, then I'm going to count by 4s. Okay, so after 1 hour total, he ran a total of 8 miles. So after 1.5 hours, I'm just going to count by, add 4 more miles. So I'm adding another half hour. He's ran 12 miles. Okay, after 2 hours, he has ran 16. One thing I want us to notice, this is kind of a little trick with these, okay, is if after 1 hour he ran 8 miles, we can measure then after 2 hours he ran 16 miles, because basically we're just doubling our time, right? 1 times 2 is just 2, so we're doubling our time. So therefore we can double the distance he's ran if he keeps running at a rate of 4 miles every half hour. Okay, so a cool little trick you can do. Okay, so for 2.5 hours, again, if I want to figure out how far he's ran in 2.5 hours, I'm just going to add 4 to 16, because again I'm counting by halves. So he's ran 20 miles, and then after 3 hours, if we add 4 again, he's ran 24 miles. Okay, so to answer the question, we want to know how far Jim ran in 3 hours. We know that Jim ran 24 miles in 3 hours. Okay. Okay, you guys, so now what we're going to do is we are going to look at a new problem. Okay, it's going to be a little bit different, but we're going to use the same idea. So the question is, on a road trip to San Jose, Sam is driving 25 miles every 1/3 hour. Sam has to drive 225 miles. So how long will it take him to get there? Okay, so again, I set up my table as my action over my period of time. Okay, so remember, this is like your numerator and your denominator. And because I'm trying to figure out how long it's going to take him to get there, I actually chose to set up my table and fill out the miles first, and then now I've got to figure out the time, because that's the question that's being asked. Okay, is how long it's going to take him. So what we did is I'm just counting in my numerator by 25s, because that's the rate that he's going, is 25 miles every 1/3 hour. So because I'm counting by 25s, I can just count by 1/3. Okay? So 1/3 plus 1/3 is 2/3. Okay? So after 50 miles, it's taken him 2/3 of an hour. Okay? To count up by 25 to 75 miles, I know I just have to do 2/3 plus 1/3, which would be 3/3. Okay? But 3/3 is also the same thing as just 1, right? So after 1 hour, he's traveled 75 miles. Okay? Do the same thing again, because I'm counting by 25 still. So I have 75 plus 25 is 100, so I can do 1 plus 1/3, which is just 1 1/3. Okay, this is when the table gets a little bit different. And this is kind of a little trick to help us solve these a little bit faster and not have to make such a big table. If you notice, I go from 100 to 150. I make a jump. Okay, I'm not counting by 25s anymore. Now I'm counting by 50. Okay, so what I can do, though, because I know how long it took him to drive 100 miles, and I know how long it took him to drive 50 miles, okay, I can just add 100 plus 50, because 100 plus 50 is 150. So if I add up the total time it took to travel 100 miles, and I add up the total time it took to travel 50 miles, then I can figure out how long it took him to travel 150 miles. So it's really just 1 1/3 plus 2/3. Okay? And 1 1/3 plus 2/3, I'm just going to add my fractions together. 1/3 plus 2/3 is 3/3. I'm going to keep the whole number. So I have 1 3/3, but 3/3 is just 1, so this is really kind of like 1 plus 1, which is 2. So it's actually going to be 2 hours. Okay? I can do the same thing now for 200 miles. Okay? I can do the exact same thing. I can do 150 plus 50 again. So because after 2 hours, he traveled 150 miles, and at 2/3 hours, it took him to travel 50 miles. I know that for 200 miles, if I add those together, 2 plus 2/3, it's just 2 2/3. Okay? And finally, to figure out to answer the question that we've been asked, is I want to figure out how long it's going to take him to travel 225 miles. I can, again, just now, I can either count by 1/3 or I can add 200 plus 25 to get to 225. Okay? So because I'm counting from 200 to 225, I'm just going to add 2 2/3 plus 1/3. And that's going to give me a whole number of 3. So the answer to the question, how long will it take him to get there? It's going to take him 3 hours. Okay, and that's rates, you guys. We're just completing the table, and that's going to help us to answer a question of how long it takes somebody to do a certain action, or how many actions can take place over a certain period of time.